Starting up in 5, 4, 3. Dashing through these rifts, always watching the time, killing all the things while trying not to die. Monsters drop no gear to keep the looting light. What fun it is to hack and slash your enemies tonight. Oh, Blood Maw sucks, it's Rhymo, fake butcher again. Ember's back with hot attacks, Bone Warlock ports away. Alright, that was my little holiday gift to all of you. The theme of Jingle Bells with, oh, why is your camera all crazy? What?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Alright, I'll try and troubleshoot that while we're working on the intro here. But yeah, that was my little holiday treat for you guys. People who play Diablo, you understand what it's like when you're in rifts, greater rifts, and you get some of those awful Rift Guardians. I figured I would just throw a couple under the bus there. So.
Yep, I hope it's a pleasant surprise to all of you, because the song is actually still a surprise to me. You're gonna have to send me that one afterwards, maybe an email or something, so I can hear it.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm sure it is amazing.
I would like to think that it's one of my best works, but I guess you'll see. You'll be the judge.
Did you ever hear that one, the nasty Diablo parody that Blizzard made so many years ago?
I remember you telling me about it, but I haven't found it quite yet.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice one for when they used to be really big into like the Christmas holiday things. They used to do like kind of a radio podcast drama for World of Warcraft with the Knights of Nomergarn, and they did obviously musical parodies for Diablo and StarCraft, a bunch of other like little fun things.
That is good stuff. Yeah, I wish they would do more of those things. Like even some people have had outcry for holiday events in Diablo, things like that. It would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing that didn't they talk about at the Reaper of Souls launch party, that they were thinking of adding in. Wyatt mentioned they were thinking of adding in like holiday themed events.
I think they've always had it on the table where they're like, yeah, we should do something like that. It's something that they talk about, that famous phrase. But I feel like we've been getting that answer every time someone says, I want XYZ for a holiday event. And I mean, I think maybe, I don't even think it's really been lip service. Like maybe one of the things that they've done with that is the community buffs that we've seen. Because I guess. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. I said, it is kind of like a mini holiday, within the game itself when it does.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it's probably tough for them to add, like, art assets and whatnot. So, reskinning trees to look like Christmas trees or something. And then also, like we were talking about before the show started, not offending people, based on what denomination they choose to go with. Or if they put up, like, a wreath, they're like, well, is that too Christmassy or is that just holiday? Like,
yeah.
So
that's why they need to go through and do Diablo holidays.
You mean ones that are there actual ones from I guess we can get to a little lore here. Are there ones within the lore from Sanctuary?
There's only one that I know of, and it's the what is it? The Night of Lost Souls, I think it is. It is. I'll look up the actual name. But it takes place within the very first novel that they ever released for Diablo, and it was called Demon's Bane. It was it was like their first. It's the first novel for Diablo, but it's not just that. They released it as a digital novel. It was Blizzard's first foray into like the ebook thing, and it did horrible. But part of it was, this was in 2000, I think is when it came out. So there wasn't that much of an uptake within the ebook community itself.
Yeah, that was early
So,
on in the in kind of the genesis of that starting to make headway, right?
yep, yep.
Before
And
the Nook, which was what Barnes and Noble's version, and then way before iPads, I think too,
oh yeah, that was before iPods.
right? So like super forefront.
Yeah. But it takes place on a singular, basically day where someone is going through and kind of reliving some of the events because it's a traveler comes across Tyrael and kind of wants to know what's happened because he's now has amnesia. He doesn't remember what happened and kind of guides him through what happened and finds out that he's actually dead. This is
Oh,
the Night of Souls, and that's why he's come back because
oh, I think didn't you mention something like this before, where it'd be like your hardcore characters could come back to life?
hmm
Ah,
I think maybe something along those lines. Yeah, when we were talking about this on holidays in a previous podcast, I did mention it that you could do something interesting where you could bring back one of your dead hardcore heroes that was in the Hall of Heroes.
yeah,
And maybe not actually like kill things, but just like hang out in the game or chat or just run around and such.
that'd be cool. Or even if they like followed you around, kind of like the
hmm
Spectral Hound does, even though it doesn't
Yeah.
really do anything, just hang out
hmm
with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I believe the entirety of that book has since been retconned. Um, It still is a nice
Whoops.
thing. It's like the one holiday that they have shown off within the Diablo lore. It's the Night of Souls.
Well, maybe this tonight we can make the statement. We want holidays, so write one into the next book.
Yeah, there we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
We should probably talk about why Archon is so still over there on the left side, just pointing.
Yes.
He
His epic sea turtle mount there.
right? Yeah, he's basically taken his talents to the beaches of Draenor. Uh,
Drano.
and he's never ever coming back. He rode off on his sea turtle, and
hmm
he's just raiding. He's actually raiding in real life, I believe. He quested all the way to Florida.
Yes, he fought his way through and made it and survived the onslaught that is Miami and South Beach.
Oh gosh.
They're actually, yeah, they were down on South Beach last night. It was interesting because he's here. He was down in Miami and drove up to Orlando today. He actually stopped by where I work and we went and had lunch together. I met his wife for the first time, and it was fun. They apparently there was a lot of alcohol consumption last night, so
Oh
they have
boy.
only a foggy recollection of what happened. Um,
That sounds about right for Archon, though,
Yeah, it is true. The man loves his alcohol. This is 100% factual.
huh?
Yeah, it
Nice.
was it was cool. At least got to see him this week. That was nice. Even though being in real life instead of on the show,
Right.
he should be returning for next week. Though I guess are we doing a show next week?
That's a good
Because
question.
because it's New Year's. Maybe we could take a little bit of a holiday break and come back the second week of January.
Yeah, we're still not sure on the specifics, but yeah, we probably will see you guys in 2015 the next time we see you. Whether that's
hmm
later that next week or maybe a week after that. And hopefully there will be exciting news.
hmm
Wink,
Yeah,
wink.
we hope so,
Yeah,
though highly unlikely.
very highly unlikely. Oh, something and speaking of news, something I wanted to mention was that it was Archon's birthday on Friday.
Yes, yes, it was. So everyone, make sure to write in emails to the show, wishing him a happy birthday or asking him to stream more often, whichever you prefer. Um, he will definitely read all of them. We will force him to read them all aloud on next episode.
That's right. Yeah, pretend like title them items of the week, and then just have
Mhm.
it be like something that you want him to do as a birthday present from him to you. Is that like the reverse? I don't know. Give out presents. He
Mhm.
can give you presents on his own birthday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
I
it does.
don't know where I'm going with that.
Mhm.
Oh man.
Well, it makes sense if you don't think about it.
Yes, and I try not to do much thinking, any at all, by the time the end of the year gets here, because
hmm
it's too much. It's too much. But that was kind of an extension of your week in gaming. You got to see a gamer in real life. So what else have you been up to?
Other than that, my job had our Christmas party Saturday night, and it was bad. So we'll just leave it at that. There was a lot of overpriced alcohol, overpriced cover charges, walking, drunk people, and just it was not pleasant.
Oh.
I think out of the 6 people in the office that went out to the Christmas party, I think one person enjoyed it. One other person would have enjoyed it until the end when he just got slapped by some random lady for no reason whatsoever.
What?
Yeah, he's just dancing off in his corner, minding his own business, and then some lady just walks up and slaps him across the face, and then her friends pull her off him, and he's like, about to get thrown out of the bar because he's about to go and start slugging her.
Oh,
But
wow.
everything calms down, and then she immediately goes up and like tries to reach across the bar and start punching the bartender for no reason, and so obviously she gets ejected.
So this woman was just belligerent, like ready to start a fight with anyone.
I don't know how she was standing, to be honest. There was yeah. So it was a very interesting evening. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Yep. It's other than that, I guess I did play a little bit of Diablo on the PTR last week.
Did you?
Yeah. We did like a little bit of a stream event last Thursday. I don't know if people caught it or not.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I feel like I heard whisperings about something about that.
Yeah, it was a fun little thing. Brandy was there, John was there too. We were playing Demon Hunters. It was kind of fun.
Oh, John from the clan?
No, different John.
Different John, okay.
Yeah, it's John Yang. I don't know.
That name sounds familiar.
So familiar. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. We sat there, we streamed it, we talked about Demon Hunters and some of our thoughts. John was actually like really insightful. He seemed to like really have his finger on the pulse of what was going on in 2.12.
He must have
I guess we can
friend over
talk
there.
about that one later.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear more about that. It sounds like an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it. Like we always pretend we have like some grand secret or like some grand it's obviously everyone listening to this knows what happened. They probably watched it, memorized it.
Well, apparently, according to chat, Minerva didn't watch it, so we can all point at her and say that she's bad.
Minerva, you're bad. I actually do want to go through and thank Minerva though. She's the one, for any of you that have visited the Westmarch workshop raid call. She was the one that actually set it up, and it's pretty beautiful. I actually don't have the number for it here on my person right now, but what I will do is tweet that out from the account at some point. But yeah, we're trying to get that working, especially once season 2 goes live. We want to get that to be kind of an active place where listeners of the stream, of the podcast, and people in the Blizz Pro clan can all kind of interact and voice chat and have a good time, find people to play with. But yeah, for my week in gaming, what did I do? Oh, actually, I was bad last week, or the last time we recorded, and I forgot to mention that I met up with Thunderclaw, who we talk about sometimes. He's a mod over at the Reddit for Diablo subreddit, and he brought over these pins from BlizzCon for me. I don't know if you can see them, but one is a golden Sylvanas, and the other is a Tyrael.
Ah, that is awesome.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Thunderclaw. I was super stoked. We met up over by his college. He lives relatively close to where I am right now, and he gave me those pins. We talked about just some BlizzCon wrap up, and we also just kind of chatted about like real life and technology and all sorts of good stuff. So it was a lot of fun to actually step outside of the house. It's weird.
Yeah, that's always a nice thing. And those are the 2 pins that I wanted, Sylvanas and Tyrael.
Oh man, maybe I don't know if it's proper to re-gift, but maybe I'll send you one of these. We can share the love.
I think I'm still actually what is it? We're supposed to be getting gift packages from BlizzCon. I don't know if they're coming next year or something like that.
Ooh. I did see, that after BlizzCon came and went, they had a lot of these, well, not a lot, but whatever was left of the stuff they were selling at BlizzCon in the store. And I think some of the pins were up there, but they sold out pretty quickly. So I would love to try and collect more of those. Oh, sweet. I just looked and saw that Thibbledorf put the raid call info in chat, and so if any of you guys who are listening want to check that out, and you have raid call already installed on your computers, or you plan to install it, our channel there is 644-6420, and we'll hopefully be actively using that in 2015.
Yeah, I've got raid call installed. I haven't been in the channel yet. One, because I'm bad and everybody knows that. Two, it's lately I've been really busy on the nights that we're not doing the podcast. I've normally been like in World of Warcraft with my guild, so I've been on Mumble. I always have had problems being on two voice chat things at the same time.
Oh, I wouldn't even know how to begin to work that, because I could imagine pressing like the press to talk for one and not the other, and like talking and then getting a weird answer and being like, wait, that's not the conversation I was just having.
I remember in Wrath of the Lich King when I was in one raiding guild, but I had left a friends guild, and so I would still hang out with both of them. And I had two different keybinds for the voice chat because my old friends guild, there wasn't that many people on, so it wouldn't really be like having to go back and forth between two conversations every once in a while. Eventually, they joined the guild, which just happened to be called Legends of Tristram.
Ah, nice.
Just throwing it out there. That was my raiding guild towards the end of Wrath of the Lich King.
Very nice.
And I eventually got them to join up, and I have not had to do that since.
That's good. It sometimes makes me wonder if they would ever. I mean, I guess they haven't for any of their games, Blizzard, but if they would integrate voice chat with their games, since so many people use third-party software programs to get that done, especially in a game like, think about Heroes of the Storm, where it's very team-based, and I imagine Overwatch in the future too. It might be worth their while to just have that all baked in, so people aren't, going and having extra programs running.
They tried it for the longest time in World of Warcraft, and it was just bad.
Really?
Yeah, and it still exists within StarCraft 2, but nobody uses it at all.
Huh. I didn't even realize that it was a thing that they had done and not worked.
It's the biggest thing that's against it is mainly you go through and you end up in parties or groups of random people that have no idea how to adjust their audio settings. So you have people that have the always on mics with their sensitivity turned up too loud that you hear them typing, you hear the cat meowing in the room next to them and the neighbor dropping off garbage out on the street. It's so much pickup. So that's one of the things that have put off a lot of people on it, and even when they had it available, Skype, Mumble, Ventrilo, TeamSpeak, whatever your flavor is, so that they still go there because they're just much better alternatives.
Makes sense. Yeah, it seems like if they wanted to get something like that done, they would have to kind of go. I mean, like, not full out, like make it the super rich feature, but they would at least have to build it out to the point where it became user friendly, and people like that guy you're describing who just has the sensitivity settings way too high would actually be able to easily adjust that and make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's like you'd almost have to have like a mini tutorial built into when you enable it for the first time that has you go through and do your audio settings and hope and pray that people just don't click through it.
So true. Oh man, what else? Oh yeah, there was one more thing. So this week I actually had a bit of a rough time in terms of real life stuff, so I kind of escaped to games because work was just really like not a fun place to be at. And it was really interesting. I got home Wednesday and I'd had a really rough day at work, so I was kind of intent on killing one of my hardcore characters in season 1. I was just like, screw all of this, I'm so like done, I just want to game and push things, and if I die, I die. Maybe that's like representative of some pent up rage or whatever. So I took my Crusader and just started to progress rifts, greater rifts, and I was like, you know what, I haven't attempted a greater rift 39 in a while. I'll try one because that was the next one I needed to progress up to, the one that I had done a 38 but not a 39 yet. So I attempted it on the Stampede Crusader, which is, most people who've been following my time in the game know, that's my second favorite build of Crusader, and there's actually, we can get into that later, but I figured I would try it just because it's supposed to be the most powerful build for Crusaders for greater rifts. And I just wasn't feeling it. Like, I tried two 39s, didn't really work. So then I went and tried Condemn, it was kind of looking okay. And I was like, you know what? If I can just get the right rift, I think this will work. And I made some adjustments and actually cleared a 39 that Wednesday night. So I had dropped down, I think, to like rank 11 at that point on the leaderboards. I was like, man, I'm out of the top 10. So that was kind of another reason why I wanted to push it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then clearing that 39 got me up to rank 7. And then the next day came and, it was more crap at work. And then I was kind of on the high of clearing that 39. So I was like, you know what? I was actually talking to Brandy. It was right before I was about to go to sleep. We were just talking about like attack plans for maybe like looking at new job prospects, things like that. And I was like, hey, I'm in the middle of this rift. I've had it paused for like 15 minutes. like, can I just finish this and we can talk? And she's like, well, I have to leave the office anyways. So she left. I unpaused this rift. And I kind of remembered that I was doing a Greater Rift 40, Greater Rift 40, but I was just like so nonchalant at that point because it was almost this weird suspension of this being a real thing. I was like, it's just another rift. So I went through it, kind of playing it with that mindset, and because it was so aggressive, not thinking that, oh my gosh, like this means a lot, like it's Greater Rift 40, I could die, whatever. That actually worked out in my favor, and I managed to clear that and moved up to rank 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was super stoked about that. I actually that night I slept for about 3 hours because I was thinking about like all this like future stuff and a little bit concerned about work, but also like the adrenaline rush of making that clear. Like I think that's one of the things they really got right with the game is a lot of people say like, oh, Greater Rifts are just for the leaderboards and it's not like the most compelling gameplay. And to some degree, I'll agree with that. But at the same time, there is that feeling when you're competing for those high level Greater Rifts and you realize that like there starts to be some meaning when you're looking at the leaderboards every day and you're seeing the movement, you're seeing people start to clear around you and your rank starts to get pushed down and you have that investment in it. I don't know, it just adds this extra level of excitement, especially in hardcore, because like it's the most dangerous thing you will do for your character, but your pride pushes you forward because you want to be like, the best, if anything.
Yeah, it's always just it has that extra level of kind of importance to it when you're pushing, that next level that you don't get in softcore. In softcore, it's kind of like you're going, and then if you die, oh well, you just reset the rift. It's like, well, I definitely am not going to make the timer now, so I just reset, and you don't care so much. But when you're doing it hardcore, it's like if you make that same mistake, not only do you lose your timer on that rift, you now have lost your character and any hopes at which trying to break that record that evening. You're coming back later.
Yeah, much less like even a week later if it's like super
Yep.
built up gear and you don't have the backups. Yeah. No, yeah, it was a really exciting time, and that was I'd definitely been on a bit of a downturn with Diablo. Like I'd been doing some PTR testing and just messing around. I was leveling up a barb actually, just trying to chase the gear there because it was going to be a little bit easier to find an upgrade there versus the Demon Hunter that I'd worked on, and obviously versus the Crusader, which I'd been playing forever. So I was just trying to find another way to get excited, and like again, like kudos to that whole creation of the Greater Rifts and the leaderboard system, because that really, once I start to see movement with that again, it was another way to get back into the game and say, all right, I have more reasons to keep grinding because now I realize like I can push this harder. I've done this. I can make my time better, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, because you mentioned playing softcore, this is probably a good lead-in to that ephemeral player way thing you were talking about earlier.
Yes. So, news has been a little bit on the light side, but we did have one interesting thing. Last week there was the Play Your Way stream, which obviously we've been talking about in prior weeks because we were pushing for Thimbledorf to try and win, and unfortunately, he did not. But I guess as kind of a makeup, I ended up getting invited to be the community member to represent the Demon Hunters on the stream last week, and that was tons of fun. Going through and getting to play, but also was putting some stress on me because coming into the holidays and such, it's like my free time is virtually nil, and then I was approached by Nevilistus the week, like 1 week prior, so the Thursday beforehand. It's like, okay, so I have 1 week to level up a softcore Demon Hunter, get it copied over to the PTR, and then geared up with which to do at least Torment level 6 for the stream to keep things interesting. no pressure. Uh,
Easy,
uh,
easy.
exactly. And so we go through, and I figured at least I can gear up faster on the normal server because I can get some help from people in guild, which just speaking of Thimbledorf, he was there as well as Shepard and a couple others from the guild were able to go and help me out and get me geared. But then we ran into the issue that my character was stuck like 5 days. My profile for copying over to the PTR was like it was stuck from 5 days. So it's like Wednesday night going through and trying to copy the character, and it's still copying my Demon Hunter from when I hit level 60 on Saturday.
Because everything that can go wrong will go
Will go
wrong.
wrong. Yeah, but we actually, we got it sorted out and got the character copied over, like Thursday, just a few hours before the stream. I didn't get everything that I copied over because it was still like a day or two behind, but it's like, okay, this is fine. I'm just going to stack nothing but vitality and resist so I can survive, and then you all can carry me, type thing.
True
And that,
leech.
yeah, true leech. But that was fun to just be there and be a part of it. And it's because my gear was at such a disadvantage. I was like really focused in on playing the stream because it's just like that mentality in the back of my head that even though I had died 10 times already, it's just like every death was just like, no, I have to avoid it. I have to get away. I have to get away. No, no, no.
That hardcore mentality.
Yeah, it was also hilariously funny. Just prepping for the stream itself, just a few hours before we went live, I found Tasker and Theos.
Yes, I was gonna remind you about that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you were. Um, yeah,
Oh man.
and so I they were garbage, absolutely horrible, and of course it was on the PTR, so they didn't even matter anyway. So it's just like, well, I guess I finally found them.
Bucket
Um,
list.
yeah, exactly. They do exist, as the M&M's Christmas commercial that's been playing nonstop goes.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it was that was nice and fun. And then I think it was the very first Greater Rift level that we cleared when we started playing. 2 pieces of Marauders dropped, and it completed my 4-piece set bonus, which is the equivalent of the 6-piece set bonus as it is on live. So
Right.
then I was actually able to go through and participate and actually do some killing myself.
I noticed that it was kind of almost too set up that you just so happen to get the 2 pieces. It was actually kind of awesome to see kind of if anything, these player ways I thought have always been really good promotion for the game because it's like always raining legendaries for some reason on the player way,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a really cool thing to see you go from like not being a major contributor to like the DPS or the group really to all of a sudden like dropping sentries and actually being able to perform the build. It kind of gives people hope who are watching. They're like, oh wow, he literally went like in the span of 1 hour able to take down some of these mid tier to higher greater rifts.
Yeah, yeah. It was obviously anyone that watched it saw that we struggled a little bit once we got up to 35. Um, but it was fun just going through and like kind of just playing with that clock in the background. Just I know that I have pressure and I have to go through and get geared within a certain amount of time. It kind of brought back a little bit of that enjoyment from the beginning of the season, where there's that huge push, to try and get like the first to 70, the first for the Torment 6 Rift Clear, or the
Yeah.
Greater Rift 30. Just all those little things is just kind of it's kind of I guess I like playing when you're like under like a time constraint, or you have that like little pressure or something incentive that you're going after.
That kind of gives some credence to, I think maybe Archon was one of the people that was pushing this previously, but maybe something like a shorter season or a race season, if you will, where it's just,
Mm-hmm.
they turn up the drop rates a little bit. Yeah, I think we're talking about this with the PTR having its crazy drop rate bonus.
Yep.
Doing that for just a week or so, and maybe those characters just never transport over into anything, but it's a way for players to really kind of get that adrenaline rush of I only have a limited time to get as far as I can. How can I do it? How best
Yep.
can I do it? How efficiently can I do it?
I'm not sure if many people noticed, but like when we were doing the play your way, everyone decided to go and have pity on me. So all the legendaries that were dropping during the greater rifts were just, being dropped out onto the ground, so that way I could maybe fill in a couple little gear slots here and there. But it was just, it was kind of interesting. By the end of the stream, Tristram was full of orange, just in the little bit of time that we had played and the few rifts that we had done. There's quite a decent amount of gear that kind of shows you just how many items, even without the 2000% drop rate, they're going through and dropping. And we had a couple ancient items that had dropped,
Hmm.
to go and make things interesting. So it's just when you're playing together in a group, it really shows just how much more you get or have access to.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the kind of calling cards of patch 2.1.2. Like I was saying, I think maybe last show when we got together, I really do believe that Greater Rifts will be kind of the next playing field over the speed runs that we see right now for T6, just because they made them that much more rewarding. And that player way was kind of a clear sign of if you get a nice party together, maybe start to speed run in a way like a Greater Rift 35 or so. Once your party is geared enough for that, then you'll be able to amount a decent amount of ancient legendaries very quickly and kind of get you to that next echelon of power to then secure your solo places on the leaderboard and things like that. I really do see a lot more play in Greater Rifts, especially with the like some of the density that you guys encountered on that stream was insane.
Hmm.
So
And that was just indicative of even the times that I was playing trying to gear up on the PTR. That's just kind of how the PTR is. You don't really have any more of those dead zones anymore that you experience a lot, on live at the moment. It's a lot more fluid. You might have a little bit of an area where there's no mobs, but you're pretty much every screen you're running into something.
yeah, I think that's awesome in terms of not having that moment where you're almost pulled out of the game because you're wondering where all the monsters went, To
Hmm.
some to speak towards sort of like player psychology, I think that whenever you get those moments that kind of suspend you from the game where you're like, wait, like what, like you become cognizant almost of the actions that you're doing, it kind
Hmm.
of disrupts that addiction that can almost come up when you're thinking like, oh, I just need to keep pushing, and you have wave after monster coming, so you know that each monster represents an opportunity to gain an item, possibly the one item you're looking for. But when that
Hmm.
gets disrupted, you're like, oh wait, there's the that moment is broken.
Yeah. Now you're like, where's the enemies? What am I doing here? It's like I could be doing something else,
Yeah,
type thing. And it
yeah,
just kind of you loses the momentum. But
exactly.
I think that even just goes back, talking about reward play, rewinding the conversation just a little bit.
Mhm.
There was, I think it was Dat Mods that was, kind of doing tests a few months ago. I want to say it was around like episode 20ish, 22, and we were talking about it, how he was doing tests on what was better in terms of blood shard farming between
Yes.
the Torment 6 rifts or like Greater Rift 30, 35, just ones that you could somewhat easily accomplish solo, and how efficiently you could run it.
Hmm.
And it was at that point they were about neck and neck with a lot of the things that you're getting with the density changes. And with now also not just that, but ancient items, because the ancient items, once you go past Greater Rift, I think it was 26 or 28 ish,
Yeah, I think
is
26.
is equivalent to Torment 6. Once you go past that level, you're actually having a slightly increased chance at finding ancient items than you would doing Torment 6 rifts. So you're slowly kind of increasing that your chance that when your legendaries do drop, that they're going to be ancient. Though I think you're probably getting more legendaries per time spent in an actual rift than you are in a greater rift, just because you have more chances at the items dropping.
Hmm.
But it was kind of an interesting little dynamic, which with the inevitable power creep that ancient items, build changes and things of that nature will allow people to kind of hopefully get to higher level rifts. They'd be see what it has an impact as far as farming, not the bleeding edge of content, but maybe will like 38 be farmable, will 40 be farmable for a lot of classes?
Yeah, no, it's a really exciting thing to contemplate because I think kind of the synthesis of everything that we've both been saying is all of those factors go into making the game wanting to be played at a higher difficulty. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, for hardcore, the idea will always be you want to be steamrolling it with the least amount of danger.
Mm-hmm.
But for something even like translating to softcore, you're going to get to the point where T6 actually becomes not as profitable. And so you will really be spending all your time in the greater rifts because you're going to have those increased chances for the ancient items, like you were saying. You're going to have the density and plus the bonus of going up to those higher greater rifts that give you more experience as well. So all
Mm-hmm.
the things that were offset previously to saying T6 is better, you just spam a bunch of those. Those are going to be circumvented with not only lowering the health, lowering the damage, so they can already creep up to higher greater rifts, but then adding ancient items and then adding more density. Like all those things together will make for that push. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's definitely has a lot of interesting things that it's going to be opening up. Um, it's very interesting. I wonder, what they'll have in mind as far as power creep goes going into 2.2. They'll, just we kind of got a little bit sidetracked from the topic of the Play Your Way stream itself, but one of the things that John was mentioning in uh, that's on track for 2.2 is revamping all of the old class sets, such as Natalia's,
Yes.
but also um, Zunamasa's, all the old original class sets that shipped with classic Diablo, and they'll be addressing giving classes more build diversity, and what that might unlock, and what type of power creep will we be seeing there, and how will it come into um, making it even more farmable, or what they'll might go back to add in to give Torment 6 Rifts some relevance besides just being used to farm Rift keys.
Right. No, it's
Yeah.
another again, that's like they keep adding things to this recipe of just excitement. I think that's why so many people are anxious to know like when will season 1 end and when can we start to expect, the build up for season 2 and patch 2.1.2 because there really are so many good things. And obviously the class set reworks are future patch oriented. So that's we need to get through the 2.1.2 step to then get to the next like introduction of those new sets they showed at BlizzCon, but also these reworks too. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean like the way that things are looking, it's really exciting to think that like John was saying, there are going to be hopefully 3 viable ways to play for each class. That's
Mm-hmm.
huge, just because at that point a lot of the complaint that people have, like, oh, I'm at the mercy of RNG. If I don't complete my set, then I can't play, competitively, or I just can't play efficiently. I feel like I'm not doing anything. But now when you add 2 more options to that, no matter how your RNG is going, you're going to find something and eventually put a build together that should be one of those 3 viable builds at the very least, right? So that's a
Mm-hmm.
really exciting thing to look forward to, even for people who don't play, as hardcore maybe as you or I or Archon.
Mm-hmm. And that also goes into something that they were mentioning kind of on the Legendary Workshop stream. That was the what was that, the week prior, or
Mm-hmm.
the week prior to the stream. And that one, I wanted to ask, there was a couple of follow-up questions that I wanted to ask, but I just got so into trying to stay alive during the rift that I forgot some of the things that I wanted to bring up, and I feel bad, but that's okay because everyone knows that I am. It was uh and now I'm forgetting what I'm going to say here again. Is just, I wanted to know that it seems that 2.2 is kind of going to be that patch that unlocks diversity for all of the classes.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's going to have multiple sets. You're going to have multiple ways of playing. I imagine the goal for the developers will be that they're all at least about on par with one another. I'm sure Torment 6 is the baseline. I'd like to see what like they're going to be shooting for as far as like, can you get to Greater Rift 30, 35 solo,
Right.
something along those lines. But you know, what will then be? What will 2.21, or 2.22? be? Is that going to be the patch in which they actually begin to go and refocus instead of on diversity and making sure that all classes have viable builds of playing? That will actually see them go to try and start balancing the classes and get that greater rift spread closed in a little bit, so you don't have some, sitting at like 52 and others at 43. Are we going to see it, compacted in, so you might see some, in 2.2 at, like 57 or 61, and then the other ones behind it are like 56. Is it gonna get closed in a little bit more so some classes don't feel left behind?
It's a compelling question because obviously at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel like their class can top the leaderboards, and not just like their own respective leaderboards, but across all classes, right? Like someone wants to play the monk and say, I hope someday the monk is like in Greater Rift 60 and no one else can get there because that's my favorite class. And someone else who's on a Crusader is saying the same thing. Someone who's on a Demon Hunter is saying the same thing. But I imagine that the goal is, as they introduce these new sets, to kind of give those options that will eventually lead each class to that high tier of play. So maybe it won't be equivalent. I highly doubt that it could ever be equivalent across all 6 classes because there's so much to balance there.
Oh yeah, I highly doubt that we'll ever see anything, where everyone can clear like the same level. That's why I still gave a little bit of a spread there. But just I wonder if you're going to have some out. Obviously, we're going to have some outliers. Right now, the barb is way out there. Not so much because of like the power of the class. And that's something that John talked about a lot, both on the Legendary Workshop as well as on the Player Way, is that they're designed and set up, and Raycor's set is like the ultimate AoE farming build, and so it can just kill mobs and get the Rift Guardian spawn faster than anything else. But then they can't do single target damage.
Right.
But that's when then of course the channeling rifts come in and why people flip maps. So you can just get that channeling, or the channeling rift, channeling conduit, not channeling.
Conduit pylon.
Yeah, channeling conduit. The conduit pylon.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. The conduit pylon to go through and then kill the boss for them, so they really don't have to do anything. And with the changes to the conduit pylon, I actually saw some people go and comment on when we found a conduit pylon during the Play Your Way stream. There was 4 of us that all had conduit, and we only killed a couple white packs of mobs with it.
Well, I mean, John himself did say like, it definitely feels underpowered.
Yeah, it's been over nerfed. I don't know if they'll have time to address that, because some of his comments kind of made it seem as if kind of the development of patch 2.12 is kind of getting to the point where it's like it's good enough for ship it, and then they'll address that afterwards. Or if we'll see some changes to buff conduit up before it actually ships out.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if it makes the time frame. I mean, it's not the kind of thing that like will make or break the game. The thing that I think it breaks is their philosophy for how they're trying to go about making all the pylons on the same level. Because at this point, conduit now falls beneath like the power level, if you will, of the power pylon or even the channeling pylon for some classes. So I think what will happen is we'll see a shift from. I mean, people probably won't flip maps for it, but they'll be more excited about seeing a power pylon and possibly keeping that close at hand for Greater Rift Guardians versus Conduit. And then maybe in the future they can bring Conduit up so it at least competes and you're not looking for one versus the other. You're happy to see both.
Definitely. And with there's just a much larger number of pylons that you come across on the maps now anyways. It's like it almost feels you're unlucky if you only find 2 within your clears. It's almost not worth it really trying to flip maps, not just because they nerf some of the the outlier conduit, but just because you're going to come across so many. I do like the element that they're designing them towards just overall completion of the rift, and that's mainly like more focused on killing the mobs than it is of being able to insta-gib the Rift Guardian. So it's interesting as they continue to tweak that going down the road, and if maybe they have any ideas for other conduit or other pylons that they might add in the future.
Yeah, I mean that's also another interesting part of this thing too, is we've been thinking about just the balance of the 4 that they have in there, the channeling, the speed, power, conduit.
Hmm.
But what if they add another one to the mix, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, we have this fifth one now that's even better than all the others. So it'll be interesting to see how they balance as they add.
Hmm.
But I do agree. It's all, the more I thought about the fact that we're just going to have an abundance of pylons, it almost feels like they're killing the RNG by ramping up the RNG if you think about it. Because now
Yeah.
you have so many that it doesn't even matter which ones you get, just because there are always going to be so many. So you're happy to go through and play the Rift just to see what you're going to see. And maybe your clear time, maybe your clear in general isn't dependent on it, but the time will vary a little bit. But it's okay because someone else will find the same set of circumstances much better of a chance of that than previous, where conduits were so rare and hard to sync up exactly where you wanted them.
Yeah, and that also just kind of goes in line with some of the comments that Wyatt made, much earlier about, RNG is kind of it's a design element of the game, and they want to continue to have the pylons in there as a form of RNG, but reining it in, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, because it makes each play different, each riff that you run different, so it adds a little bit more interest in it as you're going and playing, instead of just going and killing an endless number of monsters every single time and having no shakeup. It's like in this one I got a conduit and a power pylon, whereas this one I got a speed and a power pylon, and how it will make slight differences in how you play and change it up just for your enjoyment. With it having so many, it should hopefully balance out its actual overall power
Mm-hmm.
across all of your Rift plays, while still making it so when you actually do find one, it's kind of like, all right, there's a pylon. This is going to help me out, as opposed to what it is right now. Oh, there's a pylon. It's not conduit.
Yeah, it turns that experience into
Mm-hmm.
a far more positive one across the board.
Yeah, I've gone through 7 rifts. I haven't found a single one. I go and get one, and it's speed.
Yay!
Yay! Hmm.
Very true. Something I did want to take you to task for, because I was so waiting for you to ask this question and then you didn't, and I was like, no, he could have done it. Um, I did like that you slipped in the bit about rune words in there. Like,
Uh,
someone was talking about
uh,
legendary gems and how it'd be cool to have a set of legendary gems. You're like,
hmm.
oh, kind of like rune words, right, guys? Right? Nudge,
Yeah.
nudge. I was waiting because someone, I think, had asked a question about upgrades, and John Yang was saying, the way you upgrade your gear is to find gear, like to go through and kill enemies and get better versions, get ancient items or ancient versions and things like that. Like, they didn't want to add an upgrade system where the gear that you have now is just always going to be the one piece of gear that you have, and then you continue to upgrade it to make it the best. I
Hmm.
was waiting for you to ask about the intention of gems and the regular gems, and how they have been saying in the past, they want to do something with maybe the royal tier or a way to dump gems, and maybe that could have been a way into upgrades or even just modifications of enchanting or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one thing that did came up. I think we were just talking about it last podcast, about like legendary gems for armor in the form of jewels.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, we were, yeah.
Hmm.
The return of what was that? 4015s?
4015. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I liked at least that he was saying they were open to the idea of possibly, taking legendary gems in a different direction and having them be socketable into armor. Just the fact that it made sense to start with jewelry, because it's such a dynamic choice that you're sacrificing what are some of the strongest affixes on that slot to get
Hmm.
that socket to increase, your legendary gem gearing that you have on your character. And they do make a huge difference. One thing that I actually have been finding interesting as I start to reapproach how to tackle these high greater rifts and how to kind of advance on the leaderboards is that we've gotten so used to needing sockets in gear that we kind of forgot that you can go without them and actually still have a benefit. Like, there are some builds that maybe 2 legendary gems are just good enough, and you can
Hmm.
actually go back and take out the socket and put something else back in there, like crit hit damage or something, and you might actually be gaining more than you're losing. So I think it's really interesting that because they were the new hotness, everyone was so excited for these legendary gems, we completely shifted our thinking, and now actually a bit of old school thinking could be a way to refresh your approach.
Yeah, it definitely goes through it, and I think That's maybe speaks more so to like gem balance between builds and classes.
Tell me more.
Well, it just is. It's some they just don't have a third gem that's worthwhile using. Period. It's just like the crit hit damage is just better because everything else for this particular build is garbage. I don't have access to any slows on my own. Like if you're running, say, Firebirds, you don't really have access to too many slows, when you're running a Firebird. And so Bane of the Trapped in single play and like a solo play isn't as useful to you as opposed to, say, some of the other ones. I'm sure you can still, build it around or equip your follower, or in group play, you go through and get it useful.
Right.
But whereas opposed to something with easy access to mini cold spells such as a Demon Hunter, Bane of the Trapped is the best gem that there is.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because I think I had seen someone in clan chat saying, like, I wish there was a fire-based legendary gem that I could put into my Firebirds build and benefit from having all this extra fire elemental damage. And yeah, I mean, that's a great point, that some builds, like, they just won't benefit from having an additional legendary gem because there aren't options yet.
Yeah, and that'll be something that as they continue to go and add in new legendary gems, that will hopefully be alleviated as an issue. We can only hope. But there's a lot of interesting things, and there's just things that they can go and build upon or make better. And I would love them to find a way to make non-damage boosting gems viable, but I don't see it.
How's it gonna work? Yeah.
Yeah. How will it work?
I mean, maybe one of those cases that you're talking about where there's no great option for a third gem, maybe you get a defensive gem that's really powerful, like an esoteric alteration or a wildebeest gizzards. And maybe you throw that in your build, and that can alleviate taking an extra all-res affix on another piece of gear or on two pieces of gear. And that way you can just diversify your affix pool. It's not an exact buff to damage by going the defensive route, but at the same time, it kind of gives you more options. So even, or maybe even just as a stopgap, like maybe they'll never be endgame worthy, but let's say you find... you can't find your Unity, or you can't find that one specific piece that is ancient with 120 all-res or something, then maybe you throw on the esoteric alteration, and that helps you out until you get there.
Yeah, the problem with that just comes down to just the level of differences between the affixes on jewelry and the affixes on everything else. Because going through and giving up all resist on, say, a chess piece, what can you replace it with? You probably have main stat, sockets, and vitality. And your fourth stat that you're then going through and adding in is either all resist or a skill boost. So okay, you take the skill boost instead. But then what are you giving up on the jewelry to take that defensive gem? You're giving up attack speed, crit damage, or an elemental skill boost, which in almost any situation, of attack speed, those other three are probably going to be more powerful than what you'd get from just the skill boost.
Yeah, that's a fair consideration.
It's one of those ones. Is like in theory, it does sound okay. Well, I can give up, I can give up 10% crit chance to free up all resist on 3 other pieces of gear, even if they took it and like made it an obscene power level to your survivability. But then you're not really gaining any additional offensive capabilities from giving those up, because all the other pieces of gear, you're probably going to have those stats on that gear, and there's nothing that you can do to regain that offensive capability, just because crit damage and other things don't roll on there. Maybe if they added something to the other pieces, or we start seeing more offset pieces leveraged by the Ring of Royal Grandeur, that would make it interesting to maybe give that up. I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe something to take a note out of chat is maybe instead of defensive gems being the mix-up to all your offensive options just being that much better. Maybe we do go back to that era where there's the trade-off of, something like a magic find, something that boosts the rate of legendaries that you're getting, or another like adventuring stat.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're kind of saying, okay, I want to kill a little slower because I'm taking, one less offensive gem, but I'm hoping to bump up my odds of finding really sick items that should eventually help me surpass the level of offense that I had anyway with that third gem.
Yeah, there's one thing that I've seen actually in World of Warcraft discussion ever since. This is going back a couple of months with. There's a really big change they did in the itemization in World of Warcraft. They made it simpler. You used to be able to reforge some of the secondary stats on your gear, so you could trade out a little bit of haste for like a little bit of crit,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And you had all these different types of gem options and such, and it was almost like having to go through and play Tetris with your gear, because you have to have a certain amount of hit and you have to have a certain amount of expertise, and if you go over, it's useless. If you go under, you're severely gimping yourself, because it's until you reach the cap that's your most powerful stat, and then afterwards you have this one stat which is your most powerful until it hits this amount, then you have to get this within this ratio and all these other types of things. It was in one hand it was overly complicated, and the way that they kind of simplified it is really nice, but on the other hand it does make it a little bit less interesting, because you don't have certain stats that you have to gear for. And that got me thinking about how some of the itemization changes between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 affected the game as a whole. And one of those was the resist system, and how you actually had damage reduction on all of your gear. And obviously everyone knows how it works in Diablo 3. As you continue to increase your armor or your resist, it gives you increased reduction to that particular type of attack, or in the case of armor, against all attacks. But as you continue to increase the stat, it has diminishing returns. It drops off. So when you gain your first 500 resist, it gives you like 60% damage reduction, and then when you gain your next 500 and you go to 1000, you're only at 75% damage reduction, and then the next 500 you're only at 81% damage reduction. It continually decreases over time, but you're always getting a proportional amount of gains as you increase it. It still is giving you a higher level of defense, whereas in Diablo 2 there was a cap.
Right.
It's like once you got into hell mode, you're just looking for, I need 175 resist, to take me from -100 to 75, which was the cap. And so you had that same kind of Tetris-y like game where if I go over my cap, it's useless. So I need to position my gear, between these different resists, so that way I have a little bit here, a little bit there, and then I reach that point. And so it actually, made you want to gear defensively, because you knew that you only needed X amount, and then you could put everything else into other stats. And that might be something, I don't know if the game is built to be able to support that, or if it's a change that they could make for the game, or if it would require like a major reworking of skills. But it might be something to kind of think about. Could they add certain caps? They wanted to do it in Reaper of Souls, as we saw from some of the data mining, before the original beta went live, where they had caps on like crit and crit damage.
Yeah.
Maybe if they instead kind of put caps on some of the defensive skills, that could be something to think about or work around. Though that does put a damper on how they could do difficulty scaling in Greater Rift, since the damage continues to increase and your defensive capabilities can't increase exponentially with it. But then at that point, that brings the legendary gems back into play. Now I can go over my defensive cap with a legendary gem in order to continue increasing my survivability as we gain in power levels.
See, like I was ready to say, like, I think that would take way too much of an overhaul. And we're like too far gone at this point. But then when you bring that compelling element of like, well, now your legendary gems are what take you over the caps, then that's really interesting, because you shift the emphasis completely from, well, maybe not completely, but definitely more to the side of defense having a greater value because, oh, now you can actually climb higher, not because your offense is taking you up there and you're just hoping to dodge all the really bad damage scenarios, but you're actually able to sustain and live throughout those harder difficulties because you're utilizing these defensive gems. So they gain more power and give you more power despite not actually increasing your offense. It's a really an interesting way to look at it. I don't know if we could do it.
I like I said, I don't know if the game could actually be redesigned or how big of an overhaul if it would be worth the development time. But it's just one of those ones when you go and you look at certain systems that sometimes adding limitations can actually give you more options. It's kind of if you've not really thought from like a developer's mindset or kind of looked into things such as that, like it can be a difficult concept to kind of get your brain around. But when you have kind of these arbitrary caps that you might need to accomplish, it makes you diversify your items and makes you think about what stats you have on your gear more so. And it kind of it adds diversity through limitation.
Now you really sound like John Yang, and this is a point that I wanted to make sure we talked about because the freaking blood shard limit explanation. Come on.
Yeah.
Because you add a limitation, and now I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do have to spend my blood shard caps. But that's really the reason, because people are like, what are these purple things on the ground? Do I use anything with this? What do I do? Oh, I can't pick that one up. I guess I'm gonna go figure out what I should do with these purple. Come on, that's explainable in a loading screen with a little like white text at the bottom, like blood shards are spent at Kadala. That's explainable with a tutorial thing that pops up the first time you get a blood shard, and it says like, hey, blood shards can be used to gamble for items from Kadala. And that's also explainable again at, I don't even know, man, like, that's just crazy to me. If they really are that concerned about the new player and having them not get lost in all the different, because I get it, like there's a lot of economies to start out, like figuring out what your gold does, figuring out what your blood shards do, what your gems do, etc. But like, let us turn that off, right? Like, there's elective mode, and I understand like wanting to have a clean interface for users, but like it's already kind of cluttered. Like, go in, turn off skip cutscenes, add elective mode on, and then hey, make my blood shard cap like 1,000, please.
Yep. I have one question for you.
Hit me.
Have you ever worked in retail?
Yes, one summer I worked at Hollister, which is where I got this crazy sweatshirt from.
As I have to say, it's like you go through and you think that how could someone be so stupid? But having worked in retail for a good number of years, I always will go back to when someone says, how can someone be or need their hand held that much in like any instance? I had to go back to this conversation that I had with this lovely lady. She had to have been, at the time, this was a few years ago, I want to say late 20s, early 30s. So we're not dealing with grandma or anything like that. Brings in her computer. She had purchased it a few months ago, and she's irate because she has this error message going through and popping up on the screen. And she just doesn't know what it means, and she just wants to get rid of it, all the other type of stuff. And so she goes through, boots up the computer, goes and shows me. And what it says is, you have unused items on your desktop.
No.
Click here to clean them. I don't know what this means. I have no idea what this means.
It's not even one of those where it's like error 3056, like XYZ dot, you know?
It is like just like one of those things is just, it's like, I did not know what to do. Because I had no other way of describing it without saying what the error does, and I don't want to make this woman feel like an idiot.
Right.
It's just one of those ones. It's just like, well, what it means is that there are items on your desktop that you're not using.
That's like when someone asks you for the definition of a word, and you give them the word in the definition. You know, it's like what else? Like, it's not a good explanation, but what else am I supposed to say?
Exactly. Depends on what your definition of is. It's just it's one of those ones. It's just I have to go back and think. This is a conversation that I had to have. I had to explain to somebody what a error message saying you have, unused icons on your desktop. click here to learn more. It's like it actually is telling you, if you want to know what this means, click here.
Yep.
But they couldn't. They instead sat there for 2 weeks, infuriated by this error message that wouldn't go away, until they got to the point where they had to like disconnect their desktop, bring it into the store in order to have me go through and look at it. It's like
That's
that.
crazy. It reminds me of
Yeah,
there's
it
a
is.
there's a Dane Cook joke where he's working at Burger King and he takes a woman's order, and at the end she goes, "Where do I go?" He's like, "You go on the one road that you're currently on to me." It's like, what do you want me to say? Like, you take a left, you go to right. Like, we go to the burger lair, and if you don't get there in 5 seconds, we steal your food. Like, I just couldn't. You're right. Like, there are people who obviously need more guidance than others, for sure. But I feel like Diablo has always been one of those games where it's like, there's no instruction manual. You turn it on and you start killing things, and you figure it out as you go. But that's never been a reason for them. Like, I guess my point is, if you want limitations to that degree, to say like we're assisting new players, then I mean, like, why then have the other side of that where you're saying like we want people to not have this hefty instruction manual to read through to figure out how all res works, or how all the systems in the game works and stuff like that. Like, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth and say different things. So I just want that cap raise, man. And I want people to read the error messages. That's crazy. Did you have anything else from the Play Your Way Thursday? Did you enjoy your time?
Oh yeah, I had a blast. Not just during the stream, but a little bit beforehand. We were going through and joking around prior to the stream starting up, and the audio tests that we did the night before, or not, the Tuesday night prior to that. Just getting through and chatting, because both Brandy and John are, they're just fun people to hang around and chat with. That was my first time getting a chance to interact with John, but yeah, he was a really cool guy that was. You can tell just I got to see his demon hunter, on the PTR, and this man is dedicated.
To say the least.
Yeah, this is one of those things. Is like when you see people go through and say, "Oh, well, do you guys even play your own game?" Yeah, he plays this game.
Oh yes.
Quite a bit, and because it's not just, he doesn't have just like a geared out demon hunter. He was saying he has a geared out character of every class.
Right. Yeah, even on the stream he was saying that he was bummed he found one of the like only items he needs at this point on the PTR.
Yep.
Yeah, it's what's really interesting is I think it was 2013 where kind of Travis Day emerged as like the player that all the players want on the dev team, because he kind of gets it, I feel like John Yang is this year's Travis Day, if you will. Like, he's kind of the new face that's like, I don't it's a really weird way to put it, right?
Okay, so I have this idea, and I don't know if any of the developers are actually listening to the show, but okay, this is what we do. We put together an award thing, and we Photoshop a really bad picture of a trophy with Travis Day's face on it, and we just send it to John and just saying, "Congratulations, you are the 2014 Travis Day of the Year."
we polled everyone.
And then link back to this episode. It's just go 45 or an hour and 15 minutes in. We'll explain everything.
Yeah, until that point though, it's in his inbox. He's like, "What am I supposed to do with this? Is this spam? Who's this?" Oh, that's too good. Yep. But yeah, no, he really has emerged, I think, as one of the favorable voices. That's not even the right word. Just like one of the great voices that kind of express. I think because at some degree, there's always that weird feeling of like, there's the devs versus the community, right? Like, they're putting in changes to the game, and then we're reacting to them and saying, we like this, we don't like this. And I feel like he's been that guy that's kind of bridged the middle gap between like what I saw from some of the discussions people had with him at BlizzCon, the Legendary Workshop, and then now this Play Your Way Thursday. Like, he's really just kind of like an everyman and woman's man, if you will.
Yeah, I think it just kind of comes down to just, the personality and the way that he expresses himself. It's always just, casual, down to earth, this is how it is, type conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually even talking to Brandy about that, like shortly thereafter the Play Your Way Thursday had finished, and she said like he's just always been a natural on stream. He just has that kind of that chutzpah, if you will.
Yeah.
I did Sorry, go ahead.
And well, I mean, there's only one more thing that I wanted to comment on the Play Your Way stream, but I can use that as a finisher if there's something else that you want to
No,
talk about.
perfect. Because I was about to transition us to the other piece of news that we had, but go for it.
Mm-hmm. There's just one other thing is they did finally post the VOD today on YouTube.
Yes.
And you'll see they made links to all of the builds. And there was one thing that I said to Brandy in jest because she wanted to know, like, if I had to name my build, what would it be? And she actually, suggested the name Marauder's Light. And then I just came up with a tag: less carbs, same great taste. And I can't believe she actually added that in as a subtext
What
on
do you mean you
the
can't
name of the
believe it?
build. It's like, it wasn't meant to actually get published. What is this?
You know that you tell Brandy something like that, she's gonna run with it.
Uh-huh.
That's like
Although
perfectly up her alley of sense of humor.
Though I am not secretly happy it didn't get published because it's funny.
I dig it. But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed that Play Your Way. I thought that was probably one of my favorite ones of the ones that we've had so far. It's tough to top Deadmau5 and a hardcore one.
But I don't know, that one Crusader that they had on, towards the beginning of the whole project. He was pretty good. I liked him.
Did you? I thought he was kind of a jerk.
You said it, not me.
Oh man, well that's a great stopping point for this topic. And I wanted to quickly just jump into another piece of news. It's been pretty thin, as you guys can imagine. Things are shutting down for the holidays around Blizzard and around here too, because again, this will be our likely last episode of this season, of the year, I should say, for 2014. But we did get one last blue post, which I'll throw up on the screen here, from Brandy, Nevilistis herself, just letting everyone know that the PTR is going to be available through the holidays. This is an interesting point just because they did note early on that they wanted it to be a shorter PTR period. That's why they did that huge community buff with the absurd drop rates and absurd EXP, etc., just to get everyone geared up very quickly so they could get the testing done quickly. And actually, another callback to the Play Your Way was that John Yang went on record as saying, they were hoping to have this patch out before the holiday season hit, and there's just some snags in the road, so they didn't get it out, unfortunately, before, and they're hoping to get it out on the flip side of the calendar, so in early 2015. But my analysis of this blue post had to, of course, take me back to Seasons and realize that now we'll definitely not get an announcement about the end of the season until January, which means Season 1 probably won't end until February, and which means that we probably won't see patch 2.1.2 until, mid-February or so.
So what we're saying is my prediction was right?
Nineball was right.
From a few episodes ago?
That's what it boils down to. Nineball redemption.
Yep, that's what it boils down to. I didn't want to be right, but unfortunately I am.
I usually just say if loving you is wrong, no, I want to be right.
Oh, the touching.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a bit of a bummer. Like I was hoping honestly that we would have season 2 started by now. That was like my hope, my heart of hearts. Like BlizzCon we'd have some announcements, and then they'd say, "All right, season's ending," and then we'd be on our way. But
I remember having that chat with you while we're supposed, sitting at home watching BlizzCon from the computers. It was just going through and saying, it's like, oh, I hope they have the season out. It's like, do you think they could have the season out like before Thanksgiving? It's like, no.
You were just flat out nope. Absolutely not.
I couldn't. No, it hurt me to say no. You had such cheerful enthusiasm in your eyes.
Forever the optimist, my friend.
Yep. I do wonder. I don't know if this is a question that Brandy could even answer for us. Do you think that they'll do a brief break in between the seasons, like give everyone like a 1-week breather, or will we just see the season end with the patch like on a Tuesday, and then they start the new season that Friday? Kind of like what they did with 2.1.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to point to, was that obviously the patch came out Tuesday, and then it wasn't until the Friday that they started the season. To me, that would seem like enough downtime because you give people 1 to 2 days to get their seasonal stash integrated with their non-seasonal. But I don't know. I would kind of like there to be an extra week in between there, like drop patch 2.1.2 and then give it a week and a half or so. Because I did like the start of the season happening on a weekend, so you could kind of go ham on it for a little bit. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, could be. I definitely would. I would like to see a little bit of a break period. Obviously, not much more than like a week. But just having a little bit of downtime in between the close of one season and the beginning of another one, just to log in, get all of the items transferred over from the season to the non-season. I want to go through and get it all in order in my stash and remove duplicates and all that stuff, set away, and then delete all of my non-season characters afterwards.
Right.
Just need to get it. Need to get it there and in order.
I love it. Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, I can't wait to go in. Well, I can wait, but I'm gonna go and organize everything to then not use any of this stuff anyways. It's almost like an exercise in futility.
And then just think about all those Paragon level points that you get to spend when your Paragon experience swaps over onto your non-season characters.
Yes, all that furious clicking for a few seconds, and then it sits there. Yep. I also love, I just have to comment on all the conspiracy theorists in our chat right now who are saying, like, did you guys just say that was going to be the last episode of the season, so the season's ending soon? Do you guys know stuff that we don't know? I have to watch what I say. That was a slip of the tongue. I meant the holiday season, the end of the year. I'm using season with a lowercase s, not an uppercase s.
You're on the internet now. You got to watch what you say.
Well, I know, man.
Uh-huh.
And then Brandy's in here teasing, of course, saying, like, if something gets posted during the holidays, is 9-ball wrong? I wonder.
I am always wrong.
I would love for you to be wrong.
I'm sure that the entire Diablo community would love me to be wrong in this instance, and I would not. I would be okay with this.
This is an instance where
okay with this.
You got to take one for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. All right, well I think that covers the news. The only other thing we were talking about before the show was just the PlayStation experience. There's a YouTube link for that panel that they had out in Las Vegas. I think it was like late November, early December.
Yeah, it was I want to say it was the 6th of December.
That sounds right. Yeah. I think it was early December. It was because it was the same Saturday that we did our Diablo 2 stream.
Mm-hmm.
So the 6th or the 7th, I think. But yeah, if you guys want to check that out, there wasn't too much new info. It's basically just explaining to more of a console-focused crowd of the changes that are coming to the console. But there was a great announcement that there will be simultaneous release of patch 2.1.2. So when we get it here on the PC, they'll also be having it on both PS4 and Xbox One, the next-gen, new-gen systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so unfortunately for the PS3 and the Xbox 360 players, you will not get patch support, but I mean, it's kind of been a given since the beginning. I remember we were getting someone that was writing us in chat and also sent in an email about how he was so pissed off that Blizzard lied to him, because he had it on the Xbox 360, and he not getting patch support. That's unacceptable, and it's like they didn't actually announce that there would be any patch support whatsoever for the consoles until like a few weeks before.
Yeah, like it was like it was like the 11th hour, really.
Yeah, it's like before that they were pretty clear in saying there is no patch support whatsoever for console. It will have what it ships with, and that's it. And then a couple weeks prior they're like, well, we changed our minds, we'll add patch support to the PS4 and the Xbox One. There was at no point was there any ambiguity in it whatsoever. It was just it's like you can't say that, well, this is what they said prior, because prior they said no, and then this is what they said after, because all they said it was only for the PS4 and the Xbox One. There was never any in between for it. So it's just, you want to talk about people just wanting to be angry and upset by things.
I was just gonna say that you're on kind of a tear this afternoon because it's the people of the internet are just making you angry.
not not angry, just confused. Someone was commenting on the Play Your Way stream over on. They had this conspiracy theory about the Play Your Way streams are a way of convincing the community that there are multiple viable builds out there when each class only has like one or two, and it's just like, well, pretty much all the builds that they've shown on the Play Your Way Thursdays have all been Tier 6 viable, or Torment 6 viable, which is actually what the person's talking about in the post. He doesn't even mention Greater Rifts.
Right.
It's just like, so it's kind of like, what are you talking about? And I just, kind of chimed in a little bit. Some of the things that, John Yang had mentioned on the stream is that that's one of their goals going into 2.2 is to add more, diversity, not just for Torment 6, but for pushing people down the greater rifts. So they're looking to address that for classes like the Demon Hunter, who's already performing well but only has one build, compared to like the Crusader, which has a couple different flavors that they can go and play. And and then their response to that was just it's like Crusaders only have one set. It's like, that's true, they have one set, but they have multiple builds. It all builds off of the cons, but what they do to gear themselves or what skills they use in the play style is all very different.
Oh yeah.
That's why Crusaders, aren't really getting anything new at the moment, because they have options. And then it turns into this like paragraph long rant about how the Roland set needs to be updated and we need to have a melee Crusader, and about it doesn't fit with the fluff, and we're sold, they lied to us. This isn't the heavy, armored melee knight that they're talking about. And just, it's like, what's going on here?
I love it. It's the classic, like, you refuted one of my points, so I'm just going to change my entire premise completely. Like, now we're not even talking about builds anymore. Now we're talking about sets. Well, now we're not talking about sets anymore or variety. Now we're just talking about Rolands.
Yeah.
Next, it's not even going to be about Crusaders. It's just going to be about, like, treasure goblins. You're like, what is going on?
Uh-huh.
Where did we go wrong?
We're having some really lovely weather recently. Yeah, but taxation's too high. What?
Huh?
What? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh man, seriously.
Uh-huh.
We need to turn the vibe around, because it's the holiday season. Everyone should be cheery. I don't want any more internet rage. People, put it away for the rest. 2014. Let's end it on a good note, and I want to transition us over into the feedback.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, there's one here that is kind of for both of us, from 3 Days JPT. I was reading it. It's the most recent feedback that we got, actually, and I kind of liked it because it felt like it had a summarizing feel to it, so it fit in with this like end of the year theme that I'm trying to push. But he was basically just wondering if we could all talk about kind of our favorite builds from this season, that we've been using on our characters, and just why we enjoyed them, what we did to gear them up. And I mean, obviously we could talk for days on that, but maybe just like a quick overview of what you ended up playing for the season and how it worked out for you.
Oh yeah, certainly. I have to say that at least playing the Demon Hunter for all of the season, they don't have a lot of variety in the different things that I could go through and say. Out of the builds that I played, I definitely liked the Fire M6 build more so than the cold ones. I never got a good Intaru, so I guess that kind of helped out with it. I kind of like the feel of the fire builds as opposed to the cold builds more. And I had elemental arrow with a Kreider shot, so I was just using frost arrow in order to trigger my Bane of the Trapped in order to keep that damage bonus rolling. But out of the builds that I saw and what I was kind of gearing myself up towards, but I just never found a decent Hell Trapper or Calamity, was I wanted to play that lightning build with the meticulous bolts. That play style and that build to me just looked like awesome. I loved it. It was great, and ball lightning is just one of those skills that you just fall in love with ever since Classic. It was just great.
Absolutely agree. So when I transitioned over to my quick stint in DH, I because you had talked that build up so much, I really wanted to put it together, and I
Mm-hmm.
found like all the right pieces. Like I had like a Witching Hour and a Locuni Prowler, so I could get all the attack speed where I needed it. But I
Mm-hmm.
was too scared to play it. Like I don't feel like it's a hardcore build because you give up a lot of defense in some of those slots. But obviously the trade off is the permanent smokescreen.
Yeah.
So it just I've never liked those things because I feel like my luck will be something's gonna glitch somewhere. I'm not gonna get the discipline returned at the right time, and I'll just end up dead. I'm like, what was that all for?
Yeah. Yeah. It is one of those ones where, it does have it had kind of like a very high um, barrier of entry, because you have to have all these things set in a line. You have to hit the 4.15 breakpoint. You have to have the meticulous bolts. You have to have, either the Calamity or the Hell Trapper in order to make it really viable. And then you also had to have at least the 30% cooldown reduction, so that way you could stay in Smokescreen permanently. You had to have Night Stalker. You also had to use Preparation, at least have a decent amount of resource cost reduction, so that way you could try and spam Elemental Arrow as much as you could to trigger the Night Stalker procs to make sure that you have the discipline flowing in, so you could stay in the nights, so you could stay in the smoke screen permanently without having to worry about it. And that was just your way of dealing with all the damage at the higher rifts. So it is like all these things just kind of have to come together. But when you have that mass of like all of these concepts and gear ratios and stats and figures, and it just coalesces into this giant lightning ball of death, and it's a thing of beauty. It's
Ooh, I
a
like
thing
how
of
you
beauty.
tied ball lightning and lightning ball of death
I
all
did that.
together
I did
there.
that on the spot. I wasn't expecting that. I did
Man,
not start that sentence expecting to end on that.
I never know where I'm going with my sentences. To
Uh
be
huh.
completely honest with you. But no, I mean, yeah, it's just a scary. I don't know. Maybe my mindset is just too fragile for that. But the whole domino effect of like everything needs to line up. It's my heart can't take it, man. And
Hmm.
that's why I did my Crusader stuff. Not only because I love the class, but it's also a really sticky class for hardcore. Actually, something that I have been meaning to bring up on the podcast and have not said as of yet is I love the fact that on the PTR they actually rearranged, and no one would realize this because no one is stupid enough to play hardcore on PTR except for this guy. I don't know why I did, but I was just like, I want to know what it's gonna be like. But actually, what turns out that they changed is that there is for the Crusader two ways to cheat death. You have your proc that comes out of Akarat's champion, and you have your proc that comes from Indestructible. Now on live, Indestructible procs first, and that's the longer cooldown one because your proc cheating death on Akarat's is tied to when you're actually in Akarat. So as soon as you lose Akarat's champion, or as soon as you refresh it, you also refresh the proc. And so
Hmm.
obviously you would want that one to trigger first because it has the shorter cooldown, so you kind of have more chances at cheating death in that time slot. And so they actually changed it on the PTR so that the Akarat's one procs first, and then Indestructible is your backup, and not the other way around. It's a really nice quality, literally quality of life change. But yeah, obviously you can tell I played a ton of Crusader. That was my favorite class by far this season. And I really gravitated towards the Condemn build. I hadn't done any real research before the season started. I kind of just went in, and to be perfectly honest with you, this is going to sound super noob, but I didn't actually think that the seasonal shield that they were getting, Fighter's Wrath, was going to be all that good. I was actually more looking forward to the Unrelenting Phalanx because I'm like, oh man, like
Hmm.
this is going to be a chance for the Crusader to really shine and to have all those
Yeah.
bowmen out. So that's where I was approaching it from. And then I happened to find the Fighter's Wrath before I found the Unrelenting Phalanx, and that changed my world because right after that dropped, if you recall, Nine Ball and I stayed up like that whole first night, made a rush to 70. I kept playing, and I died right after getting the Fighter's Wrath and the Blade of Prophecy.
Yeah.
And that was just an awesome start to the season, but it was kind of crazy because I was like, oh, I just lost that build. It was a cool build, but I'm really aiming for this other one. But then when I started over again, I really wanted to get into that whole condemn spam again, if you will, because it was such a fun, visceral play style. And it's really brought me a lot of enjoyment. Like people, when I stream it, they're like, don't you just get tired of like running around T6 rifts and spamming? I was like, nope, never. Condemn
Hmm.
is awesome because it just has that really like there are builds that just feel like they output damage properly, and
Hmm.
you get to run around, you're fast, you're powerful. It hits all those different metrics that make that addiction playstyle kind of come through to the
Yep.
surface.
You know the thing that I like the most, just either from watching your stream or when we're playing together, from when you trigger the condemn explosions on mobs, it's when you proc the smite gem, and you
Yes.
see all those little golden smites just coming down from the heavens. When you hit that condemn, and all of a sudden you just see like 8 of them proc at once, and it's like I know those are hitting for close to 100 million damage each. So it's just I wish I could do that.
It's
It's just
yeah, it's that fantasy,
Mhm.
right? Like it's the whole idea of like this is so specific to this class and it feels so awesome. You're making other classes jealous because they want to do that. And the same way when I look at your demon hunter, I'm like, man, I want to drop those sentries, which is why I ended up building one because I'm like, he's talking about it so much. This holy grail quest of finding Tasker Theo. I'm like, well, I have one or two or three, so I might as well go for it. But yeah, I think they
I
really hit
have
the
one
nail on the
too.
head. You do have one now.
Uh,
I do think that they really hit the nail on the head in terms of the builds that are viable. Maybe there's only one or two right now, and they want to diversify it more. But the ones that are there are just so fun to play. So
mhm.
it's my wrap up on that feedback. Thank you for sending that in 3 days JPT.
Yeah. The next one that we have comes in from uh, Mladen. Mladen.
Aladdin?
Yeah, Aladdin. Mladen. Um, from and this is actually coming over from. Let's see. Let me pull that back up. He is originally posting this from the EU forums. He wants to say, sorry for my bad English, and then he writes something that's wonderful, perfect grammar, in
Yep.
punctuation, better than what I could ever write. But his idea is just wanting to go through, and he wants to kind of bring back PvP. And this isn't your typical PvP ranting post. He wants to, he has an idea of how we could make a form of PvP, in the game that doesn't add any new modes or anything like that, that just keeps it at brawling, but changes it to make it interesting, or at least more of a level playing field. And this is actually something that Flux over at Ink Gamers has gone on for a couple of years now, I want to say, in that you have special PvP servers with like basically preset like arenas or places that you can fight in preset gear. So
Hmm.
you can't go out and farm anything else or anything new. Is you're just given, all of your gear kind of at the beginning, and so that way all the classes only have like a certain thing that they can choose from, more or less to try and balance it. So you can try and have classes that are somewhat within the same power level as one another in terms of statistics, to try and give some semblance of balance to brawling. And it will be a separate, PvP only realm that you can go log into, play, and do your own thing. And this, sounds basically what they did in World of Warcraft for a good number of years. I think 2014 was like the first year that they hadn't done it in a very long time, where they actually do have a special PvP only arena realm that you actually have to pay like $15 to participate in this tournament. Um, and it's, if you just want a PvP, you just want to do arenas and nothing else, you go on this realm, and it's just nothing but people that want to play arenas.
Hmm.
And that this would be it. It's like you go through, you log in, you start up your PvP realm, and you literally want to do nothing else in Diablo besides just brawl with people. And well, here's what your gear selection is. Go have at it. You know,
Yeah.
and that it kind of goes with what Flux's old idea is, kind of making it an arcade fighter with the same thing. You have like maybe like 3 flavors of one class with a few different builds that have preset gear on them. You can change the skills if you want to, and then you go and you fight it out from there.
I mean, it seems compelling, but I just feel like it might get to a point where people are like, well, you have this whole intricate system of gaining gear through blood shards and greater rifts and regular rifts and stuff, and people get attached to those characters too. So I think at some point you institute that system, but then it's not good enough, right? And so you'll get that outcry for, okay, you gave us PvP, but we want more. We want to use our own characters, and I think that's probably the reason why it's been so hard and why we haven't really seen it is because when you do add that factor of all these different characters, these different gear levels, ancient items, things like that in, it's way too hard to balance. So maybe the arcade brawler would be, but people would just have to be okay with accepting that. And I don't like looking at the player base that we have. I just don't know that it will ever be enough.
Yeah, I will say that Wyatt has commented on this in the past, because this idea has come up previously, and they don't like the idea of it because you're not playing your character. They don't like it just from that stance, because it's something that you're going through and playing that isn't yours. You have no like attachment to that character, and just for like what you're saying, you want to be able to use gear that you found, and so that's why they're not going through and doing it. Though it's one of those ones where I wonder how it would turn out, because one of the things that actually came with the creation in World of Warcraft with the arena tournament and the arena realms is because of that. Is people wanted to go through in PvP, but many of the items that dominated PvP, even though this was after they created PvP specific gear, some of the best things still came from raiding. And a lot of the people that did, phenomenal in PvP, they didn't raid. They had no interest in raiding. They didn't want to do it. All that they would be doing is just joining up, getting carried for a chance at having that one item, that one weapon, that one trinket to drop. And they were sick and tired of it. We just wanted a level playing field where people just played with the same PvP gear, so that way we can fight each other and say that it was skill that won this battle, and not because this guy killed Heroic Lich King and has a better weapon than anybody else in the game. Because they have the legendary Frostmourne, and can just, or not Frostmourne, Shadowmourne, to obliterate anyone else. And so that's one of the reasons why they went through and did it, to make a level playing field, because the people that were doing it expressed interest in it. What we have right now is PvP is essentially dead. You don't see anyone attempting to do it through brawling, and that's a comment that Archon loves to make when we come up with the discussions about PvP, that if people were legitimately wanting to do it within Diablo, we would have more of an outcry for it. We would have more of a community built around trying to make it work. And I think a little bit of that is because there's not enough in the game at the moment in order to promote it. Is you have one map with a little bit of damage reduction aura when you go in there, and then that's it. Maybe if we had a little bit more variety or a different play mode, like capture the flag or something like that, to add a little bit more interest into it, you might see more people kind of taking up that banner to request PvP get added. But as it stands right now, there isn't enough of a demand for the developers to warrant their time to do it. If you want it, you need to express it. And, you kind of need to show that you're interested in it, and go out and try and develop like a brawling community, or get brawling going, in order to say that it's like, look here, you can point to it and say that there's people that are interested in it. Make this happen.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of two different things. One is this kind of idea that Jake and I have been throwing around, and some other people in the community too, where we want to see the Greater Rift scene become more competitive, and maybe having a lot of that get built up by the people themselves, instigating and creating their own leagues, and having clans match up against each other for show matches and things like that, to make, because I put something out, I was like, what do we have to do to get Diablo an esports stage at BlizzCon in the future? And maybe that's just a scene that we can build up, the same way you're saying, like, if Blizzard wants to support it, they need to see that there's going to be some sort of blowback in player support, and players really wanting it to be a use of their time and money and efforts to make that happen. And I think we saw it happen with Hearthstone, if you think about it, because there was no true tournament scene built into the game. Like, there are so many famous quotes from Eric Dodds and Ben Brode saying, like, we never thought that this game was going to be as big. We didn't think it was going to be an esport. And obviously that scene took off to the point where they needed to add things like spectator mode, which they just got. They needed to add like an esports thing, which was huge at BlizzCon this past year, just to support that scene and keep the money coming in. So I think that, there is a lot of power to the players, that if you want it, grind hard, make it happen any which way. Even if you only have one map, even if you only have like limited choices, like you say, we're only going to duel in white gear or something. Like, if there's a big community and you build it up and you make it loud and proud and visible, then you can at least say you tried.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's something that you really want, you probably enjoyed it on the way there.
Exactly. Even if it never comes to like true fruition or true completion or whatever, you at least gave it, that really hard college try or whatever they call it.
Yep.
All right. I will take this one from Duke. He basically asks, or not asks, he points us in the direction of a video from Moldrin, which I've been following his YouTube stuff as he's kind of reemerged into the streaming and production scene. And he was doing some Diablo things, but then he switched over to Hearthstone, so I stopped following him for a little bit. And then he came out with this interesting theory on why Blizzard/Activision shut down the auction house. And he pointed towards these documents that appeared online that sort of basically said that there's this weird thing going on where some games are kind of interacting as banks because they allow real money transactions to come in order to get like items and things in game. So it's kind of like money in and things out, and this weird like basically saying that there's a possible way to launder money, and like very bad things could happen with these games kind of acting as banks, if you will. So they started to lobby all these restrictions and rules that needed to be followed. And he pointed out that the date of following those rules and they're going into effect also coincided with the day that the auction house was shut down. So it stood to reason that there was some sort of, maybe there's something going on here where they decided that it was going to be too much work to comply, so they just shut it down. And that was the real reason, and not because, Blizzard actually cared about the outcry from the player base and wanting to find items, in a way that is actually more compelling than just buying them off of some list of items on a auction house. But, my heart of hearts says that maybe this could have been a background reason, but I don't like to believe that we're being puppeteered around to think one thing while another thing is happening. Like, I felt like this was a long time coming, the auction house being less of an integration into the game, and less of a means of characters powering themselves up and whatnot. Because it really didn't feel like fun. Like, all these self-found leagues, you want to talk about like things that started from the ground up and started to get a rallying cry around them. A lot of people started to play self-found. A lot of people started to neglect the auction house altogether. And it really kind of proved and showed that people wanted to do it the old-fashioned way, in quotes. They wanted to find their own items. They wanted to have that pride of building up a character that wasn't just things bought. So it's interesting, but I highly doubt.
Yeah, that is one of those ones that is just kind of like, I don't know. I never really gave it much thought in that idea, because it is one of those, seems weird, especially with all the comments that they made prior to the launch of the game, with a lot of the restrictions that they were making, with how you could like once you put the money in, you couldn't take it out, in things of that nature. Just because they had specific things set in place before the auction house ever went live, to make it so they would not be classified as a bank, so that they could avoid a lot of those compliances and regulations and things like that. So I don't know. It's
you got to believe me when I say I love a great conspiracy theory, because like X-Files is like my favorite thing ever. Like, I feel like I am Mulder in real life. So I will always go for one of these, but this one seemed a little too far gone to fully buy into. So it goes though.
Yep.
Did you want to take any others?
Yeah, I wanted to say, let's see, there's the one from Swarm. And he, of course, goes through and opens up with, "Sup, fellas."
Yep.
Yep. Love your show, and just wanted to share an idea with you. Something that I thought would be interesting was to make the Ring of Royal Grandeur still good, but not completely necessary, and use the new Ancient Items additions, so that way you could make sets that had the ability to use one less piece if they're all Ancient. So if you had, 5 of your 6-piece set were all Ancient, it would still give you the 6-piece set bonus, and that it wouldn't stack with the Ring of Royal Grandeur. So that way you could get the same effect, but not have to use the item and free up your other ring slot, as it were. So that way you add a little bit more diversity, through it. It is kind of an interesting take on it. It would give someone that's taken the time to farm out that much gear to have gotten the full 5 pieces. I just think that would be a little bit too much of a power creep, because one of the things that the Ring of Royal Grandeur is that it itself, you're giving up, if you're not playing, if you're playing solo, it's like you're giving up your SOJ, and then if you are playing in a group, you're going and giving up whatever your unity bonus would be or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that I think that would probably just be a little bit too much of an increase in power than giving up the Ring of Royal Grandeur, because then at that point, especially if you're doing a solo rift, now you can have both your your full 6-piece set bonus, your off item, a unity, and an SOJ, and that just seems a little bit too much of an overkill.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely it's a compelling use of the ancient items besides just more stats.
Yep. And he also just wanted to actually, this is fitting because he gave a shout out to the 2 of us, but left Archon out.
It's like he knew.
Yeah, he knew what he was going into. He wanted to say, Leviathan, I'm glad you got your dog back.
Yes, very happy. United for the holidays.
Yes, there you go. And then he also wanted to say that he's glad that I'm feeling better. So thank you very much.
Yeah, man. We're all glad you're feeling better.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad I'm feeling better.
All right. I think that about covers it for the feedback. There was one that was talking about area damage that is kind of a longer conversation because it is a bit of a neglected stat. Like whenever I see it on gear, I'm just like, oh, cool, free reroll slot. But there's definitely more. I think at one point someone has suggested like an area damage set that would really work off of that and make it interesting. I would love it, honestly. The one thing that I will say I observed from going to DH was the Invoker set stopped dropping, and it was like the best thing ever because I didn't have to look at these stupid green items that I did not want, besides Black Thorns at that point. But I would love maybe like a way, because I think the developers have openly admitted like Thorns is just like not a thing right now, and it might not ever be a thing. So maybe they take the Thorn set and rework it to work with area damage. Like it could probably be some really like outside thing, and maybe it would work in T6 or something. But I don't know. There's no room for it right now, and it'd be cool if there was interactions.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where I think it has too many limitations. There's just when it procs, it doesn't hit it won't hit the mob that it procs off of. So when in those instances where you have a bunch of mobs that are spread out that might be outside of the range of its proc area,
right?
It's wasted. So against a large number of mobs that like to run around or float or stay spread out, it doesn't have as big of an effect as it could, or that you would like it to. If it procced more in a way such as the new multi-strike in World of Warcraft, where it would proc as the AoE, as a like the reduced amount of AoE damage, but also still procced against the target that procced it, that would give it a little it would give it a little bit more oomph in that area, and then also making it so that it could proc off pets.
Yeah, that could be cool if it was maybe just like a niche affix that made some other aspect of your build better. Like, yeah, so if, for instance, pets could benefit, maybe they even got like a bonus multiplier on it when it came from pets specifically.
Yeah. That's one of the things that they did with certain classes within World of Warcraft. They specifically made it so that way, beside not counting how they interact on the damage meters and such, they specifically went in and gave certain classes specific mechanics that made them focus on one stat as opposed to another one. So it's like, a Death Knight really wants multi-strike because they have an additional ability which increases the damage of their multi-strike. So they like that one because it procs, when they get that proc, it means more for them than it does for most other classes. So if you had something that interacted with certain skills, or you could always, of course, design a set with some sort of proc that would make it, work for one class as opposed to another.
Well, I mean,
You
that
know?
really was the whole idea behind the redesign of the Thorns stat, too,
Mhm.
was, they were building skills within the Crusader class that were supposed to interact with that. And I think a lot of them either got reworked or got scrapped completely until I think maybe it was Travis who was saying there was that bug that made Thorns really good to the point where it actually had to be fixed and brought back into line because it was
Mhm.
too good. So it's funny that, like, we saw Thorns be good. There was a time where it actually could work, but it was
Yep.
too good. So it's almost like it's never going to be enough, or it's always going to be too much, and
Yeah.
maybe there's no middle ground.
That's one of those ones I'd like to see them like go back and readdress, because Travis Day, went and mentioned, like, when they nerfed attack speed at the beginning of Diablo 3. He kind of, looking back on it, said that he wished that they didn't, and that was a bit too much of a knee-jerk reaction,
Mm,
because it balanced itself out by the end of Classic. And at that point, attack speed was just it was still part of the trifecta, but it was the low part of the trifecta.
more of a nice
Yeah,
to have.
yeah, exactly. And that if they had not even touched it, it still would have balanced itself out, and attack speed would still have been at the bottom.
Hmm.
It still wouldn't have been as good as crit or crit damage, and then it just wouldn't be that far below them otherwise.
Right.
And I wonder if they could go back and look at the game as it is now, and then add back in the bug with Thorns, or the damage scaler that was on the Thorns passive for Crusaders, that was giving them like the Wows and Thorns damage back in the beta,
Hmm.
depending upon what difficulty level you had set at. If they could go back in and re-add that, and ramp up Thorns damage, how effective would it play? And would it be a level that the developers would see it as acceptable? I think back in the day that Thorns build for the Crusader was more than Torment 6 viable.
Right.
How far could it have gotten in Greater Rifts, and would it be at the point that the developers would even think needed to be nerfed at this point?
Right. Well, it's interesting too because Brandy's saying like the problem with that is that it also takes away gameplay because you basically sit there waiting to be
Mhm.
hit, and it does make this interesting connection to what they were saying in the Legendary Workshop where there are some ideas where they sound great on paper, but then you try and tie them into actually playing the game, and it could be less of an interesting idea once you're actually utilizing it. Because yeah, I mean at that point like if I'm putting all my character affixes and DPS and everything into just waiting to get hit, then I'm not really gonna feel that great about hitting stuff myself because it's just okay. I have to wait. I have to wait. I have to wait. In the same way that you're kind of waiting for your sentries to kill everything in M6 in a way, you know.
Yeah,
So it's
that is
the other
true.
side of the coin there.
That is true.
And it's tough because I would like to see Thorns do something, or maybe it gets to the point where it's ancillary enough that you want to have it, but it doesn't become the main thing because at that point, once it's the main thing, it's the main boring thing, and if it's the best, people are gonna do it anyways. But it then takes away kind of what the whole point of what the developers are doing and making this game where things move around and there are fixes and stuff that you want to run away from.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll see. What would be really cool, actually. I don't want to like keep going in on this, but just one more quick idea. Would be really cool is if you could wear that set, right? Like design this really cool thorn set, and then also have black thorns, which would take away all of those molten and ground affixes. Come on, don't fail fish me yet. And so you weren't taking damage, but your thorns still projected the damage as if you were taking it.
Hmm.
So you had like this reverse gameplay if you actually want to stand in all the really bad stuff. It's kind of like the yin and the yang of vortex and knockback. This is crazy. I know.
You're not supposed to stand in the fire.
Stand in the fire.
Everything for the past 10 years of World of Warcraft has taught me to not stand in the fire.
Stand in the fire. It burns us. Oh boy. All right, whatever. Well, maybe to be tabled and thought of for another day.
Yeah. You just kind of killed it at the double thorns.
And you know you like that. Black thorns?
Yeah.
Off the cuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, how about
I have one. There's one more.
Hit me.
One more. Email that we got from Stan wanted to know where the opening and ending music is from.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure he's probably referring to the normal opening theme that you don't really hear that much on the show anymore, but they're actually sound clips taken from Reaper of Souls. So if you're looking at where you can get the full tracks for either of them and download them, you can get the Reaper of Souls soundtrack from iTunes. In addition, they also just recently released that, what was it, the Sounds Sanctuary?
Yeah, it was like a Halloween release.
Yeah, that you could go through and take a look at. But definitely, those tracks for the opening and ending are both pretty awesome, but they do not come close to the most epic songs within the soundtrack. I think you would really like it.
Very true. Yeah, I think that Sounds of Sanctuary has kind of the background music from many different areas in the game, which all are really beautiful and are kind of put in the background when you have all your effects ramped up and your legendaries dropping and pinging and stuff. So you don't really pay attention to it, but when it's just the soundtrack itself, it's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks to Brandy, I now have a song from Burning Crusade stuck in my head. I will not move when Flame Wreath is cast or the raid blows up.
And then the dog barks. Oh, that's beautiful.
And that is why I don't sing.
Little did you guys know that there would be music on this show. We've really just covered the gamut. I thought this was going to be like a boring show. We had no Archon. Man, I love it. Surprises. Holiday surprises. All right. Well, with that, I'm just going to go ahead and hop into the items of the week.
Yep.
Oh, man. Soon you'll be seeing on your screen 9-ball, but there is a beautiful grandfather. He's slightly bald, a little bit under 5'2". I guess right around 5 foot or so. This is actually just for the audience. I'm actually like trolling the iTunes and Stitcher audience, but for the people that can't see this is actually a grandfather two-handed sword. You know, from the legendary awesomeness of back in the day in D2. This is an ancient one that was sent in by Inno. And he was saying, you wanted a 5,000 two-hander, you got it. So he re-enchanted another stat for 10% damage on here. He's got the 7% increased attack speed, so that's what's helping to really ramp this thing up. But 5,000 DPS, pretty tasty. I'm all about that. So it's...
Yep. This is a show of things to come.
Yes, that's true. Hopefully you will find something like this in your suite. I also like that Inno transmog this into a Blade of Prophecy. Because, Blade of Prophecy.
Yeah.
Oh, and I also should note, too, that he did socket it with a Ruby to bump up that base damage.
Was just about to go through and say that. He did manage to get the base damage through the over 5k through using a Ruby, but I don't care. I'll accept it.
Right on. Next item up is actually not even an item. It's motivation to watch the stream when we go live and we do the podcast here for all of our people who are just listening. It's a beautiful picture of the starting area when you load up Reaper of Souls and you're going on that first path to weave your way into Westmarch. Mm-hmm. That's Westmarch. That's where our workshop is, somewhere in there.
See where the little arrow is on the map there? Is just pointing? That's that building right there.
That's where we're filming this show right now.
Yeah, right now.
Thought I would just include that one. That was pretty.
And I just noticed that arrow just now, and so I figured
that was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
Nice segue into the arrow.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a suite of items from Mad Hamster. This is his furnace, and it's quite a beauty. It actually has no main stats, so any class could use this, which is interesting to me. It has not been gifted, so you could always re-roll the socket into some other stat and then put the socket back on to get a main stat on there. But it's a 3,886 DPS furnace, and this is not ancient. This is just straight up regularly awesome. 9% damage and a 6% increase attack speed, so that of course is what's helping to bump this up. And then 42% against elites, so that's a little low, but not too shabby. Plus it's a furnace.
Yeah, I mean it's got that going for it. So
not too bad. And then here's an item that I believe Nineball will have some interest in. It's got 636 dex, a perfect 7% attack speed, 44% crit hit damage, re-rolled for a 10% critical hit chance increase, and 50% perfect increase attack speed of pets. Yeah, we're talking about a Tasker and Theo.
yeah, at this point, I mean, the only thing wrong with the item is just the low dex roll, but it doesn't matter. Because as it stands in 2.1 at the moment, it rolled perfect pet attack speed and the 7% attack speed.
Mm-hmm.
That is all that you could really hope for, like in this item, in addition to, of course, getting the critical strike chance and the critical hit damage. But those are the attack speeds are two of the biggest numbers when trying to get that 4.15 breakpoint for the lightning build, which is just ruling everything at the moment.
Exactly.
So as it stands, that is beautiful and probably one of the best that we've had since then.
Yeah, no, I would say this is because I don't think we had any that nailed those two essential stats perfectly yet.
Yeah.
Not too shabby. This next one's for me. It's also from Mad Hamster, but I threw this up here just because I love me some Crusader items, and these are set shoulders from the Akon set. They're nothing like too sexy, but it just hits everything perfectly. It's got re-rolled for 498 strength, so 2 off perfect, 492 vit on a natural roll, 99 all res on the natural, and then 8% CDR. So like all of these natural rolls rolled beautifully high. And then as a secondary, you've also got a little bit of pickup radius, which is useful if you're running the condemn set because you want to have a little bit of pickup radius to get those health globes in their time of need. But it also looks like he still has yet to complete his 6-piece set. So this is you're done with shoulders at this point, unless you want condemn specific shoulders, but you're going to want these for greater rifts anyways. So I applaud that.